Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionism, like Impressionism, was a French phenomenon that included the French artists Seurat, Gauguin, Cezanne, Toulouse-Lautrec, and the Dutchman Van Gogh, who did his major work in France. Their career spanned from 1880 to 1905, after Impressionism triumphed over academic art. The post-impressionist style derived from their forerunners' breakthroughs. Instead of the brown gravy of historical painting done in feebly lit studios, their canvases shone with rainbow bright color patches. Yet the post-impressionists were dissatisfied with Impressionism. They wanted art to be more substantial, not dedicated wholly to capturing a passing moment, which often resulted in paintings that seemed slapdashed and unplanned. Their response to this problem split the group into two camps, much like the neoclassical and romantic factions earlier in the century. Seurat and Cezanne concentrated on formal, near-scientific design. Seurat with his dot theory, and Cezanne with his color planes. Gauguin, Van Gogh, and Lautrec, like latter-day romantics, emphasized expressing their emotions and sensations through light and color. 20th century art, with its extremes of individual styles from Cubism to Surrealism, grew out of these two trends. Georges Seurat. Degas, one of the founders of Impressionism, nicknamed Georges Seurat the Notary, because the young painter always wore a top hat and dark suit with precisely pressed trousers. Seurat was just as meticulous in his art. "They see poetry in what I have done," Seurat once said. "No, I apply my method, and that is all there is to it." His quasi-scientific method is known as Pointillism. It consisted of applying confetti-sized dots of pure, unmixed color over the whole canvas. Seurat theorized that complementary colors set side by side would mix in the viewer's eye with greater luminosity than if mixed on a painter's palette. The whole was supposed to fuse together like a mosaic from a distance, but actually the individual specks never completely merged, giving a grainy, scintillating effect to the surface of the canvas. Because Seurat's system was so labor-intensive, he finished only 7 large paintings in his decade-long career. His most celebrated work, A Sunday on Le Grand Jatte, took him 2 years and 40 preliminary color studies. Seurat kept the bright, unmixed colors of the Impressionists and their holiday, open-aired themes, but added a stable design based on geometric shapes and rigorously calculated patterns. Concentrating painstakingly on the landscape of the park before focusing on the people, always their shapes, never their personalities. Individuals did not interest him, only their formal elegance. There is no untidiness in Seurat. All is beautifully balanced. The park was quite a noisy place. A man blows his bugle, children run around, and there are dogs. Yet the impression we receive is of silence, of control, of nothing disordered. I think it is that makes Le Grand Jatte so moving to us who live in such a disordered world, Seurat's control. There is an intellectual clarity here that sets him free to paint this small park with an astonishing poetry. Even if the people in the park are pairs or groups, they still seem alone in their concise form. Alone but not lonely. No figure encroaches on another's space. All coexist in peace. This is a world both real and unreal, a sacred world. We are often harried by life's pressures and its speed, and many of us think at times, "Stop the world, I want to get off." In this painting, Seurat has stopped the world, and reveals itself as a beautiful sunlit and silent. It is Seurat's world, from which we would never want to get off. Seurat's last painting, Les Cercles, conveys a mood of frenetic activity. The acid yellow and orange colors and upwardly curving lines of the performers contrasting jarringly with the muted spectators arranged horizontally in static rows. Seurat suppressed detail to give the scene a simplified, poster-like artificiality of the entertainment world. Seurat died at age 31, 3 days after exhibiting the painting in an unfinished state. His mother hung Lautrec over his deathbed. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. Toulouse-Lautrec's work was so similar to Degas' in style and content that he might almost be taken for a mini Degas. Lautrec made his own sizable contributions, however, in lithography and poster art, two media he virtually invented. The art of the two men was indeed similar. Lautrec drew his subjects like Degas from contemporary life, Parisian theaters, dance halls, and circuses. Both artists also specialized in portraying movement and private moments through slice-of-life glimpses with abrupt photographic cropping. This novel asymmetric compositions of both derive from their mutual admiration of Japanese prints. Virtually all of Lautrec's paintings are figures in interior night scenes, lit somewhat arbitrarily by glaring artificial light. His primary interests were the actors, entertainers, acrobats, and prostitutes who he caricatured to highlight their essential attributes. Lautrec also caricatured his own deformed appearance in bitter self-portraits. Born to France's most blue-blood family, the 1,000-year-old Counts of Toulouse, Lautrec was a self-imposed exile from high society due to a childhood tragedy. As a teenager, he broke both legs, which atrophied, giving him a 5-foot stature with a child's short legs, the torso of a man, and a grossly disproportionate head. As a teenage invalid, Lautrec abandoned his love of writing and shooting for his interest in art. The adult Lautrec led a notorious life, alcoholic and syphilitic. He consorted with bohemians and social outcasts. For his series of paintings of bored prostitutes lounging around dreary bordellos, he lived in a brothel for a time. Lautrec's most original contributions was in the realm of the graphic arts, for he single-handedly made this new medium of lithography and posters respectable media for major art. Beginning in 1890, he designed posters of bold, visual simplicity, which took possession of the streets, as everyone agreed when they first appeared. Paul Cezanne. In 1874, a critic dismissed Cezanne as no more than a madman with a fit on him, painting the fantasies of a delirium tremens. By 1914, the new Christopher Columbus of a new continent of form was how another critic hailed him. In the intervening 40 years, Cezanne ignored both Howells and Hales, painting every day not to win the admiration of fools, he said, but to try to perfect what I do for the joy of reaching greater knowledge and truth. Although he began exhibiting with the Impressionists, Cezanne was too much of a loner to join any group. Even among the Impressionists, he was considered different. Manet called him a joke. Degas thought he was a wild man because of his rural accent, comical clothes, and unorthodox painting style. The public denounced Cezanne's painting with a vengeance. Coarse, degenerate, incompetent were some of the milder opinions. At the first Impressionist exhibit in 1874, sneering crowds were loudest around Cezanne's paintings, doubling up with laughter and hooting that his canvases were one of those weird things derived from hashish. In Mount Saint Victor, a landscape he painted more than 30 times, Cezanne portrayed the scene like a geodesic pyramid, defining the surface appearance through colored planes. To create an illusion of depth, he placed cool colors like blue, which seemed to recede at the rear, and warm colors like red, which seemed to advance in front. The culmination of art is figure painting, Cezanne said, and in his last 10 years, he was obsessed with the theme of nude bathers in an outdoor setting. Because of his extreme slowness in execution, his shyness and fear of his prudish neighbor's suspicions, Cezanne did not work with live models. Instead, he tacked up reproductions of famous paintings and drew on his own imagination rather than observation. Cezanne liberated art from reproducing reality by reducing reality to its basic components. Paul Gauguin. Gauguin lived in Peru as a child, and as a young man spent 6 years as a sailor visiting exotic ports. For more than a decade, he was a prosperous Parisian stockbroker, a middle-class father of 5 who took up Sunday painting in 1873 and exhibited a thoroughly conventional picture in the Salon. In 1883, Gauguin had ditched his family for his new love, art, and jettisoned traditional painting for what he called savage instinct. Not long after, the former financial wizard painted his Parisian apartment chrome yellow with the Tahitian words for "Here One Loves" over the door, and paraded the boulevards with a monkey on his shoulder and an outlandishly dressed Japanese girl on his arm. It was obvious from the beginning that Gauguin's life would be extraordinary. An extremely gifted child at carving wood, a neighbor had predicted of him, "He will be a great sculptor." At the age of 9, Gauguin saw a picture of a hobo and ran away from home, yearning to amble down country roads with a bundle tied to a stick. "This boy is either a genius or a fool," his headmaster concluded. When he became a full-time painter at 35, he headed for Pointillism in Brittany, a backward province on the French coast where, he said, "I find the primitive and the savage." He proceeded, as he said, to restore painting to its sources, meaning to primal emotions and imagination. In the process, Gauguin transformed art. His vision of the crucifixion, Yellow Christ, shows Christ, with Gauguin's own face, completely yellow, with the cross planted in Brittany, surrounded by orange-colored trees. The public was slow to recognize his merit, and Gauguin found himself without tobacco for his pipe, sometimes going for 3 days without food. His painting, Breton Village in the Snow, was hung upside down as Niagara Falls and sold for 7 francs. "It isn't difficult to make art," he noted. "The whole trouble is selling it." What kept him going and kept him on the move was his terrible longing for the unknown. As he said, "which made me commit many madnesses." This quest led him to devise a totally new method of painting based not on his perception of reality, but his conception of it. He refused to reproduce surface appearances, instead transforming colors and distorting shapes to convey his emotional response to a scene. Portraying his dreams was the essence of Gauguin's non-naturalistic art. Dream over it and seek the most simple form for it. The painter Maurice Denis acknowledged Gauguin's pioneering discoveries. Gauguin freed us from all the restraints which the idea of copying nature has placed upon us. Seeking pure sensation, untainted by sick civilization, Gauguin spent his last 10 years in the South Seas. Gauguin's contributions, taken up and extended by others, included flattening forms, using intensified colors for emotional impact, and above all, presenting his subjective response to reality. His South Seas painting demonstrated these tendencies. La Orana Maria, which means "I hail thee Mary," portrays the Annunciation, radically reinterpreted. Gauguin retained the angel's greeting to the Virgin and halos for Mary and Jesus. Everything else is recast in Tahitian terms. The simplified figures, the firm outlines and rhythmic patterns, The symbolism drawn from primitive sources, the rich colors, especially lilac, pink, and lemon, expressed the vitality that the non-European culture embodied for Gauguin. Shortly before his death at age 56, he wrote, "It is true I know very little, but I prefer the little that comes from myself, and who knows whether this little, taken up by others, won't become something great." He dared to portray an internal reality, and those who profited were artists like Munch, Matisse, and Picasso, and a whole slew of abstract artists. It's no wonder Gauguin is among the founders of modern art. Vincent van Gogh. Love what you love was Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh's artistic credo. During a brief 10-year career, Van Gogh produced sun-scorched landscapes and brooding self-portraits. Born in Holland, Van Gogh was obsessed with religion and social service. A misfit who failed at one vocation after another, at age 20 he asked himself, "There is something inside me that could be useful, but what is it?" He determined to fulfill his mission to humanity through art, consoling the unfortunate through realistic portrayals of working-class life. In 1886, when Van Gogh discovered Impressionism in Paris, his work underwent a total metamorphosis. He switched from dark colors and from social realist themes to a light-drenched outdoor scenes. He was still a humanitarian. At one point, he proposed selling his sunflower paintings for 40 cents each to brighten the walls of workers' homes. But he changed from, as he said, trying to express the poetry hidden in peasants to portraying the healing power of nature. "These canvases will tell you what I cannot say in words," he said, "the health and fortifying power that I see in the country." Even though Van Gogh adopted the broken brushstrokes and bright colors of the Impressionists, his art was always original. He had a horror of an academic technique, claiming he wanted to paint incorrectly so that my untruth becomes more truthful than the literal truth. Van Gogh soon based his whole practice on the unorthodox use of color to suggest any emotion of an ardent temperament. Like his hero Gauguin, Van Gogh disdained realism. Many have interpreted the distorted forms and the violent contrasting colors of Van Gogh's canvases as evidence of mental imbalance. The shy, awkward painter, self-described as a shaggy dog, was subject to overwhelming spells of loneliness, pain, and emotional collapse. Alternately depressed and hyperactive, he threw himself into painting with a therapeutic frenzy, producing 800 paintings and as many drawings in 10 years. He painted all day without stopping to eat, at white-hot speed, and then continued to paint into the night with candles stuck to his hat brim. Van Gogh has come to be the prototype of the suffering genius who gives himself totally to his art. "I risk my life with my work," he said, "and my mind has half foundered." His life was bitterly unhappy. Van Gogh was thwarted in winning recognition for his work and only sold one painting during his lifetime. He was similarly unfortunate in love, rejected by several women. When a Dutch spinster finally accepted him, her parents forbade the match and she poisoned herself. Art became Van Gogh's only refuge. "In the south of France, I let myself go," he said, "paint what I see and how I feel and hang the rules." From 1888 to 1890 at Arles, at the sanatorium at Saint-Remy, and finally at Auvers under the care of Dr. Guichet, Van Gogh, although deeply disturbed and prey to hallucinations, turned out one masterpiece after another, an output unmatched in the history of art. Inspired by nature, he painted cypresses, blossoming fruit trees, flowers, and wheat fields, charged with his favorite color, yellow. It was while he was a patient in Saint-Remy Asylum that Van Gogh produced Starry Night. He was painting in a dumb fury during that period, staying up 3 nights in a row to paint because, as he wrote, "the night is more alive and more richly colored than the day." The picture conveys surging movement through curving brushwork, and the stars and moons seem to explode with energy. What I am doing is not by accident, Van Gogh wrote, but because of real intention and purpose. For all the dynamic force of Starry Night, the composition is carefully balanced. The upward thrusting cypresses echo the vertical steeple, each cutting across curving lateral lines of hill and sky. In both cases, the vertical forms act as brakes, counter forces to prevent the eye from traveling out of the picture. The dark cypresses also offset the bright moon in the opposite corner for a balanced effect. The forms of the objects determine the rhythmic flow of the brushstrokes, so that the overall effect is of expressive unity rather than chaos. Although under constant strain, he was at the peak of his powers technically, in full control of his simplified forms, zones of bright color without shadow and expressive brushwork. Every time I look at his pictures, I find something new, his physician, Dr. Gauguin, said. He's more than a great painter. He's a philosopher. Yet Van Gogh was often despondent at his lack of prospects and dependence on his brother for financial support. Until my pictures sell, I am powerless to help, he wrote. But the day will come when it will be seen that they are worth more than the price of the colors they are painted with, and of my life, which is generally pretty barren. In 1990, Van Gogh's portrait of Dr. Gauguin sold at auction for $82.5 million, a record price for any work of art. After receiving a letter from his brother complaining of financial worries and fearful of being a burden, Van Gogh ended his letter with the words, "What's the use?" walked into a field and shot himself. He died 2 days later. Briefly conscious before dying, he uttered his final thought, "Who would believe that life could be so sad?" At his funeral, between sobs, Dr. Gauguin eulogized Van Gogh. He was an honest man and a great artist. He had only two aims, humanity and art. It is his art that will ensure his survival. Van Gogh had said, "I would rather die of passion than boredom." He had speculated on the prospects of immortality. A painter must paint. Perhaps there will be something after that.